Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button, Season 4, Episode 14. I am your host, Alejandro, and doing another solo episode as it usually is, week in and week out, based on whenever we are and on Paul's availability. So, yeah, this is going to become more and more of a common occurrence, especially now that Paul's time in the show is like slowly winding down as he gets near his parental leave that will be here like before we know it. Like his baby is just this close to being born, so he's gonna be taking care of that, and no other guests available for my recording time. So yep, time to do another episode solo. So welcome everyone. Just a reminder that this is the X Bottom Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Fridays from 10 a.m. onwards, God willing. Available in the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at tinyurl.com/escapegaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. And just a little bit of housekeeping and just speaking with some listeners of the show, just kind of getting a little feedback on when the show actually goes live usually, and what would they prefer. Many of the people that we polled and asked have told me that while they like the Friday show, they actually would prefer if it was a Thursday show, kind of like it was back in a few times. I think it was a year or two ago that we were still like posting on Thursdays, and some were telling us that it going live on a Thursday would just be better for like their work day on a Friday. So that would be like, more exciting than having just a podcast for like the weekend. So based on that, like this will be the last episode that posts on a Friday, and going forward we're back to Thursdays from 10 a.m. onwards, God willing. So can't wait to see how that one goes. And I will say that I did post the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth spoiler cast on a Thursday, and that episode has done really well, almost initially. So there may be something to that. Plus, there's a lot of Friday shows that are big competitors, so might as well put it on Thursdays. So, yeah, moving forward, that the X Bottom becomes a Thursday show. If Friday news happens, they'll be covered the next week. So, now time to talk about what have I been playing. So, last week I mentioned that Rise of the Ronin and Dragon's Dogma 2 were kind of like the things that I was kind of playing, and then Dragon's Dogma 2 was the thing that I ended up dropping because it just kind of lost me. And while they patched the thing that I mentioned the last time I did a solo episode, that was supposed to kind of like add like the stability thing and ray tracing, being able to turn it up to hopefully make the performance feel better. I know, like I saw my console yesterday like update the game again, so I'm like, I haven't checked if that was supposed to do anything else, but yeah, Dragon's Dogma 2 is just not something that appeals to me currently. Maybe one day. Maybe I'll be in the mood. And then Rise of the Ronin, I kind of kept chipping away at it. I hit a couple snags there where the difficulty really like spiked. That was even hard, even like dropping down the difficulty, that I kind of needed a little break from it. But I'm still enjoying Rise of the Ronin, kind of like in a gameplay, from a gameplay perspective. Rise of the Ronin is really good. I really love that fierceness. I really love that tightness. I prefer that level of control over something more methodical than like a Souls game. Even though like people have been listening to the show know that I've turned around my opinion on Souls games, and I actually do like them now. But I still have my preference over something snappier and fiercer, and that's Rise of the Ronin. It's just kind of like I needed a little break from it because I was getting a little tilted. But it feels like I won't never stop talking about Final Fantasy in this damn show. But I was like I tell you people, I'm still like, even weeks removed from having recorded that spoiler cast and doing my review that you can read over at Season Gaming, like I'm still thinking about Final Fantasy. I'm still in the Final Fantasy mood, and what I try to kind of like do to satiate that mood, especially with the DLC for 16 coming out next week, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, today's the 11th, like whenever the 18 lands. Let me check the calendar. Yeah, the 18 lands on the Thursday when the next episode lands. So that's funny timing. But yeah, so like I said, I've been waiting, but I still kind of like I have this weird like just want more for Final Fantasy. I have such a hunger. I went back to Final Fantasy 14: A Realm Reborn because the crossover for Final Fantasy 16 launched on the 2nd and is lasting all the way till some week in May. But in order to get into that crossover, you need to have finished A Realm Reborn, which is kind of like the base campaign that launched back in 2013, and at least be level 50 to be able to do that crossover. That supposedly is going to give you both a Torgal mount and some gear that makes you look like Clive, and also gives you kind of like some missions that you actually play with next to Clive, which I've seen some videos is actually really cool. Problem is that A Realm Reborn, just the base game, is so damn long. It's so big. There's so much in it. And a lot of it is not that exciting, that trying to basically make my way to endgame, basically, or trying to just finish what is the base offering of A Realm Reborn has been kind of like a little laborious, especially because everyone unanimously will say that the game gets really great come expansion time. So like once you're done with A Realm Reborn, which is like good, has its moments, the expansions onward is like what people always champion from this game, but it's like it's behind such a time commitment. And because I last played 14 last year when I had like my snafu over buying the expansions and then like forfeiting my free trial, I was able to pay like a month. I have to figure out how I'm going to be able to do that, but trying to get reacclimated to the systems, trying to get reacclimated to the UI and just how much there is. Like, this is not a game that you can just easily jump back in unless you really knew about it and you were super hardcore about it. It was really tough. And I did a couple dungeons, especially that I paired up with some players. That was actually really fun. Especially seeing like the different combinations of different classes, playing usually a normal sword and shield character because I'm usually pretty basic like that. But seeing what you could do, like being able to matchmake with some people still doing some of those dungeons, that was really fun and gave me some similar vibes of doing similar dungeons in other kinds of Final Fantasy games. So I was like, it's cool that they were able to sort of replicate that in an MMO environment. And yeah, it's like I'm gonna keep trudging away to see if I'm able to complete everything about A Realm Reborn before the crossover leaves. It sucks that the crossover is only there for a month. Obviously, it's like that helps with engagement. That's the FOMO and all that. But it's like I also wish there was a quicker way to get through that story. Obviously, I know that there's a way to pay it to get to like level 50, but apparently it's like doesn't really complete story or something like that. I don't know. It's like I saw some conflicting image because I was like thinking about like something like Destiny did that you can pay to like skip the campaign and all that. I was like, people keep telling me that it's just the things that really make this game sings are all these expansions. Should I just pay to skip? But then it's like people say that there's like still stuff from A Realm Reborn that it like comes to bear in later expansions, so they still kind of recommend the first run through to be like a normal run through, and then you just pay the skips if you want to do alternate characters. So MMOs are a mess. It's like they're great for a reason, but they're also messy in a way that like the onboarding can be really rough. And it also sucks that I will forever be cursed for having like done that impulse by buying all those expansions at such a sweet deal that every time that I play this, I really need to pay for a subscription. So it's like I'm not able to like enjoy A Realm Reborn in a more leisure way. So it feels like I really have to commit, and it's harder when there's like so much around it. So as I'm also going through A Realm Reborn, I went back to Crisis Core, a game that I already went through and my second time earlier this year in the lead up to Rebirth. And again, it's so funny, like being in the Final Fantasy mood and still like thinking about Rebirth and just being in the Final Fantasy VII world, going back to Crisis Core again after like what I did a few months ago, just to kind of like beeline through the story. And this time I want to see if I want to get the Platinum Trophy for that game. And I have just been doing a bunch of the side missions that you can do like in the safe spots. I've done 202 of those missions. My percentage completion says that it's at 67% out of 100. That's a shit ton of missions. That it's insane how much bite-sized missions they've included in that game. And it made me appreciate it more thinking back of how this game was a PSP game, how this game was supposed to be a mobile game. Well, more like portable game, not mobile game. That the bite-sized nature of those missions should like work better for people that are like maybe commuting or just want something real quick. And from that quickness, it's like I've learned to appreciate a lot of those missions, even though the later level ones are so incredibly hard. are so incredibly cheap. Right, there's a level 10 right now that I have to kill some cactars that when they do like their 1,000 spine burst, just immediately kill me. And I was able to kind of brute force myself into doing a lot of the hard content at what's supposedly an under level sack, and I was still able to do it even though it was a laborious effort. But I feel I finally hit my wall and I may need to grind, and the way to grind in this game is kind of like a really obnoxious because there's no way to calculate how much XP you have. It's like it's an invisible way that they tabulate how much experience you're like getting from beating enemies, and you will get the level upgrades randomly while you're in combat because it's part of the DMW thing that is like the kind of like the roulette thing that's like in the corner. So I started like grinding up and now I'm at like level 72, but that's still really low. I want to see if I can grind up all the way to level 99. Just like normally, thankfully I have a bunch of podcasts I can catch up while I do something so mindless. But I'm really enjoying like revisiting Crisis Core for a third time now because I only beat that thing once when I did the review for Season Gaming back in 2022 and I really liked it. And then my revisit while I was just beelining and I was like, maybe this is not as great as I remember it being. But now, as I'm settling more into it and replaying it, because I beat it kind of like in the rush of I want to do all these games as I get ready for Rebirth. Not that I live in a post-Rebirth world and I can be a little bit more leisure. I'm enjoying my revisit a little bit more, especially how much Rebirth like re-engaged me and made me love this world even more, that I'm even noticing tiny little details I didn't notice from Crisis Core that were referenced over in Rebirth. So I was like, man, it's like they really interconnected these games a little bit more in more subtle ways than I was expecting, and that's made me love this even more. So let's see if I break. Let's see if I'm able to like get the platinum for Crisis Core. I know I'm gonna get the platinum for Rebirth. They recently today they patched the trophy that was not popping for many people. Thankfully, I had already earned that trophy before the patch that fixed the fixed quote unquote the performance mode broke it. So I had that done, but I still need to grind up my characters to level 70 over in Rebirth so I can do the hard playthrough with less trouble, because I tried to do the hard playthrough while I was level 55 and in the second chapter trying to beat Midgard Summer, which is the giant snake. Big mistake. That snake raped me like real hard. it was like, oh yeah, I really need to grind up for this. I need to, and it's quicker to get XP now, kind of like in the quote-unquote New Game Plus of Rebirth. So I definitely gonna do it, but I also want a Platinum Remake because it's like I did so much stuff for Remake this past 2 months ago when I also did that replay. I was like, if I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna go all in. Especially right now that my next review over at Season Gaming is seemingly gonna be Stellar Blade, which I briefly mentioned that I played the demo last week, like when we were doing like what we've been playing, and that demo was really solid, but it took me 2 tries to really get it. The Stellar Blade demo kind of like my struggle with it was that I thought it was gonna be a much quicker game than it was, especially because I was just coming out from Rise of the Ronin. Rise of the Ronin is actually a more fiercer game, and Stellar Blade is kind of like this weird in between where it has the technicality and combos that a game like how can I say this, like a Devil May Cry has. You can unlock them and all those moves, but it's definitely more firmly planted in the Souls-like perspective, where it's like more about like the pair, or not even Souls, more like Sekiro, kind of like the perfect parry of like having to tap L1 at a very specific moment. You can do some perfect dodges that's gonna help you with some enemies that will sometimes stun lock you in really brutal ways. And it's not a game that I was expecting Stellar Blade to be something that was gonna be just more like a fast-paced Bayonetta style Devil May Cry / Nier Automata style game, based on kind of like the tone that it was going for. And they just kind of were able to strike the middle, where once you really get into the flow, I get why they hit this middle ground, because it's not quite Soulsy enough, but it's not quite action gamey enough. It's like a middle area that I find really intriguing, and I want to see if it's if it hooks me for the long term, like in the full game. Thankfully, if you played the demo, it does the Final Fantasy 16 thing of you can continue playing after the end of the boss that you get there. So I got that done. I was able to grind up my I don't remember what her name is. I think it's Eve. That's her. That's the name of the character. I got a bunch of upgrades. Like I was just doing the back and forth that I love doing when you give me an XP boost. I'll just like grind and grind and grind because I just love being optimal. And I hope all of that carries through. There's some real promise there, and obviously there's a lot of jiggles in those character models that it's gonna make a lot of people uncomfortable. But the action's really cool. It looks really great, and I can't wait to play that full game when it launches later on April 26th. So yeah, that's what I have been playing. So just a little bit of everything right now, but we got a few news to kind of go through, and a few heartbreakers and a few sort of exciting ones. So press X for some news. Starting with the Heartbreaker one, story number 1 by Tom Ivan over at VGC. EA Motive was reportedly hoping to make a brand new Dead Space game. After its Dead Space remake released last January to critical acclaim, EA Studio Motive spent a few months exploring ideas for a new series entry, according to Bloomberg sources. It's claimed the studio was particularly keen to make a brand new game rather than a remake of Dead Space 2, although both ideas had been on the table. However, the project was never even given the green light and was reportedly shelved as early as last spring following disappointing sales of the remake. Which, by the way, I looked up, 2 million copies was seen as disappointing. I hate this industry sometimes. This corroborates claims made earlier this week by Giant Bomb, which said plans for a Dead Space 2 remake were put on ice after the first game failed to deliver commercially. EA responded to the publication's report with a denial. We don't normally comment on rumors, but there's no validity to the story, a spokesperson told IGN. The publisher announced this week that Motive is joining the company's wider Battlefield development team. It will work alongside fellow EA studios DICE, Criterion, and Ripple Effect in building a Battlefield universe across connected multiplayer experiences and single-player, the publisher said. Motive, which is also currently developing an Iron Man game, previously made Star Wars Squadrons. So, it didn't matter that the Dead Space remake is one of the most impressive remakes that have come out this generation. Kind of like just hitting that perfect spot of faithful and new, and not being quite the perfect copy of the original game that came out in 2008, but hitting all the important milestones and developing it to such a degree that you would be a fool to play the original one instead of the remake. It was like, that's how good that was. And while I personally enjoyed the Resident Evil 4 remake more because I found it more fun, the Dead Space remake was more impressive from like a production standpoint. The audio design, like the work that EA Motive put into that thing was even bigger than I was expecting it to. That even though I loved the other game more, I still respected it a lot and gave it its flowers. And I would have expected EA would have how can I say this, kind of like still continued their good guy arc when they were doing like a more single player stuff and doing good stuff considering how bad EA usually is. And once again, EA is the experts at scoring their own goals. Like, it's insane that all goodwill that it always happens with EA all the time. Back in 2008 when they were doing Mirror's Edge and when Dead Space originally came out, they're like, we want to be more than just kind of like the licensed studio that just shits out sports games every year and just and does Battlefield and Medal of Honor. Oh yeah, we're backtracking from that, back to our same old. Then in 2015 they did that again. We just don't want to be like the evil corporation. We were gonna bring back the Mirror's Edge with Mirror's Edge Catalyst, and we're gonna try to do EA originals like what's happening with Journey over at Unravel. And oh yeah, we're now going full into microtransactions. We're canceling the Star Wars game from Amy Hennig over at Visceral Studios because there was like no way that an Uncharted style Star Wars game could give us our version of FIFA Ultimate Team, which has been like the most destructive thing that could have happened to that company in just providing enough greed and a bad idea of what true monetization for a game should be, because a lot of people are just like so easily scammed into just buying these stupid Ultimate Team cards that they insert to their now EAFC games instead of FIFA. Thank God that FIFA's no longer they no longer have the FIFA name. But then like Jedi Fallen Order, like hit so well for them after they gave that game such a little budget because they didn't believe in it. Like they believed in Battlefront 2, which is the one that got all the microtransaction fiasco. And then they're like, yeah, the success of Jedi Fallen Order like showed us that there is a market for single player stuff, and from that is where they decided to bring back Dead Space. That's where the spirit of allowing BioWare to release the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect for those 3 games kind of came out from. So it's like, as it always goes with the roller coaster, we're finally down again, down the roller coaster with them because they're one of their most celebrated games apparently didn't sell the gajillion units. Horror is not supposed to be something that sells that much. It just isn't. And it happened with Callisto Protocol, where apparently like Glenn Schofield, the original creator of Dead Space, like promised Krafton, the publisher, that gave him money for that game. They're like, you have to sell we'll be able to sell 5 million copies of this. It gave us enough money, give us this 160 million budget because we're gonna make it that back that way. And they only sold 2 million, so they lost money because of that. And apparently EA doing the same mistake now with Dead Space, and now it's not only that we're not getting a Dead Space 2 remake, which by the way, just as an aside, Dead Space 2 you can play it right now on PC and over an Xbox backwards compatibility, and it has 60 FPS boost, both Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3. Dead Space 2 still holds up spectacularly well as a game, so it's like it's not a game that really needs a remake. A remaster would be fine because PlayStation people are the ones that are kind of SOL there because they don't have a workable backwards compatibility, so they wouldn't be able to play that game. They only have access to the Dead Space remake, while over on Xbox they have both the remake and backwards compatibility for the original 2008 game that didn't get a FPS boost, and also Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3. And I know Dead Space 3 is one that I really want to get back to it. It's like a lot of people like really I know Gene Park was mentioning that if you really look at it just as an action game, it's actually really good, and I kind of want to, but it's like every time I try playing that game I always get distracted with something else. I've never given it its due, but I really like it as a mechanical shooter. Like, if from a mechanics perspective, Dead Space 2 plays so well, and Dead Space 2 is just so excellent. I love Dead Space 2. So it's like at least there's ways for the series to still be experienced over in the Xbox side, but a remake is not, it wasn't as necessary. I would even argue the original Dead Space, until I saw the remake, it didn't even need a remake either, but they were able to justify it. And it's sad. I think what's even more sad is the fact that Motive felt so emboldened from like what this report tells us, that they were looking into doing their own thing, and that's kind of like the interesting stuff, or the interesting way that the Dead Space remake was positioned, because it kind of gave you an idea that they were implementing stuff from 2 already into like the framework of the original one, that I could see like a sequel not just being a straight up doing what they did with 2. They could have even do something different. They could have totally done that, and they got denied, and instead they're now being put into Battlefield purgatory because these shooter franchises really need all freaking studios working on them. And so sad, especially for Battlefield, that has just been so bad in recent years, where 2042, I barely hear anything about 2042. Like, I don't even know if it really went through its redemption story after, like, I know that Season 4 was kind of like a resurgent time for that game, especially because that's around the time that it hit Game Pass over on Xbox. And I think it also was given for free for PS Plus. I could be wrong. But then from them, we don't hear anything about it. It's like just Battlefield as a franchise just feels so tarnished because EA just mismanaged them so catastrophically, where from Battlefield 4's botched launch at the PS4 and Xbox One launch to Battlefield 5 launching as basically an early access title because they didn't have enough time to build it because they were fixing Battlefront 2. And then Battlefield 2042, where it clearly was done in a whim so quickly, they tried to PR their way and to be like, no, there's not even a single player campaign here because we want to like focus on our strengths, which is multiplayer. And look what happened. It's like the multiplayer only Battlefield 2042 that launched was the worst it's been in years. So it's like, I feel like Battlefield feels like it's inside a ditch and it still has a long wait before it can climb back up. And it sucks that then EA feels like they have to throw every freaking studio on it to try to like escape from that ditch. And I don't even know if a lot of people really care. That's how tarnished Battlefield feels. even at a time where Call of Duty right now is also kind of going through, even it's still successful. A lot of people buy it, but it's like the sentiment towards Modern Warfare 3 was like very negative at launch, and I know the hardcore people have been like really happy with the updates. I haven't really kept up for it. I hated Modern Warfare 3, so it's like Call of Duty is still just there, and it will still continue being there. Though I'm curious about this year's Call of Duty. We're gonna talk about that later, but then like with the only other thing that Motive is working on is that Iron Man game, and I'm like, I said it before, and I think I just have to reiterate it over and over again. I'm just sick and tired of Marvel at this point. Marvel, a brand that I used to really cherish, has just been so driven into the ground for me that even today, when I see so much praise for an allegedly a 5th episode of the X-Men 97 show that people are telling us that this is the greatest thing that has happened in the MCU, like probably ever, I'm like, cool, don't care. Like, I really don't care. It's like something broke within me. Where even me trying to attempt that Spider-Man 2 New Game Plus, after a while, I was like, yeah, I'm not feeling this. Like, Marvel just doesn't do it for me. And I know that Motive was also working on like an original IP. I remember they had teased that back in 2020, so that's gone now. So, once again, like, Marvel just pretending to prove kind of like a safe thing for developers to do, and all like screwing this medium of any originality and creativity. And that just makes me so sad. And what's even funny is that, yeah, they want Motive to work on that Iron Man game, even though EA said that they're walking away from licensed stuff because they want to do more original stuff. And I'm like, okay, then why do you put Dead Space on ice? That's an original stuff that you own. Like, EA really is like, lesson learned. When it comes to like the big publishers at this point, it's just now EA and Ubisoft, because Activision's already owned by Microsoft. Is like, never praise them, never hope for the best, because even as soon as they start giving you something good, they'll rip it away from you at any point. Like, I know that especially Ubisoft right now, as they are slowly trying to rebuild themselves. It's like, I've already been burned by them, that I'm never gonna like fully 100% praise them on anything anymore, because I feel the only people that are worth praising are more like the smaller guys or the more up and comers, that I don't even want to praise, like Sony or Microsoft even. So it's like, they're not worth that. So it's like, RIP Dead Space. It sucks that Motive proved they could do a really good one, especially after the death of Visceral. And this is what happens. So, story number 2 by Jordan Miller over at BGC. This is a kind of an interest because my interest has been reignited after something that happened this week, and especially the launch of their free event that happened. Bungie teases what's beyond Destiny 2 amid Destiny 3 speculation. The game's next expansion, the Final Shape, will be released in June. At the beginning of a live stream this week showing off Destiny 2's next expansion, the Final Shape, creative director Luke Smith briefly teased plans to rebuild the future of the franchise in the coming months. Facing the Witness is not the end of Destiny 2, and it's definitely not the end of Destiny, he said. After you face the Witness, we're going to tell you what's coming next to Destiny 2 and beyond. We'll see you soon. Following a delay, the Final Shape is scheduled to launch on June 4th. It's set to complete the Light and Darkness saga, which has been building since the first expansion to the original game. Bungie has previously said that following the expansion's release, it plans to replace the game's current seasonal structure with an episodic one. During Wednesday's livestream, Bungie also announced the new Prismatic subclass, which combines the powers of the light and darkness for the first time. This is the thing that really excited me. The official announcement lined up with a Reddit leak posted in February when it was claimed that Bungie was working on a system called Prism that will allow players to mix and match abilities from different subclasses. Notably, in the same post, the leaker also claimed Destiny 3 was in development under the codename Payback. One of the big changes for Destiny 3 was again, they don't know, for classes to no longer exist and allow any character to spec into any ability, since lore-wise there is no reason you couldn't. Hunters explicitly learned Blink from Warlocks, and Blink isn't tied to a single element, hence the logic here. So, since yesterday news, the same Reddit user has resurfaced claiming, via Forbes article, I've seen some speculation on this forum and I want to set the record straight. Codename Payback does not mean we lose in the Final Shape, or after the 3 episodes, though to be fair I know nothing more than any of you about the episodes. The internal codename of D3 is not a reference to any story events, rather codename Payback refers to Bungie getting payback against themselves by creating something they hope everyone will love. I do not know if there are any plans for Destiny 2 items to carry over into Destiny 3. That's what the Reddit leaker mentioned. So, Obviously, Destiny 2 Into the Light, the event that's supposed to bridge the end of the final season that they posted for year 6, which was Lightfall's year, into the delayed the final shape. We're kind of like in that period of Into the Light where they announced Onslaught, which is the Destiny's version of Horde mode, which a lot of people have been asking for forever, and it feels like that they had to like break glass and press the red button in case of emergency to deliver that to fans that have been asking for that, on top of a lot of weapons and a couple of missions that they bolted that they brought back. The live streams that they had been doing over the last 3 weeks have helped in like improving morale towards a game a lot of people have been feeling really, really ambivalent about, including myself. Like I was a huge Destiny fan up until Lightfall. Lightfall was such a calm down, especially from the heights of the Witch Queen, that I was hoping the seasonal stuff was gonna try to carve back up like some positivity after they fumbled the back so badly with the Lightfall campaign, and them kind of like wheel spinning with the raid, which was fun, but it was like didn't really change the needle. But the worst part was that sentiment never improved over the year. It's like the seasonal model at that point had hit a breaking point, and they tried hard to fix stuff for that seasonal model, and it didn't work. It's like a sentiment kept going low and low. The reveal they did for the final shape was very subdued. It was like it wasn't a we're back. It's like, sorry we disappointed you with Lightfall. Here's like this amazing stuff to try to get you excited. That didn't work in that for that live stream, which it's so sad to think about, because it's like I even saw it in our reactions when I did it with Paul for when we did Lightfall and when we did the final shape. Our reacts for Lightfall is probably our most watched video on the channel, and then the final shape reveal around the same time the year after barely did views. So I was like, dang, that's where we are, huh? And there was just a sign that it was like they were limping their way into the finish. It was like, where's this grand finale that we've been building for the last 10 years? And then like this live stream that they had mentioned after they did their 3 live streams for Into the Light, where a lot of people got excited to be able to try this free event that's already live. They were like, yeah, the day that we're launching Into the Light, we're gonna show you some gameplay for the final shape. And everyone's like, okay, cool, let's see. And then they just blew everyone out of the water with this prism, with this prismatic subclass that combines literally everything. So it's like now power creep is like blowing up through the roof with all the wild combinations you can make, and it's finally them embracing, finally, like no holds barred, the magical fantasy that is Destiny. Like this combination of gunplay and the superpowers that all these guardians have, and now being able to like mix and match all of that instead of having to like pick one subclass that gets something's funneled into one specific gameplay style, like from what you see with what they were teasing with that video from this Tuesday. It was something to make the wildest of wildest combinations that is gonna re-energize the gameplay so much, on top of them finally adding a new enemy type that they haven't done since they added the Scorn back in 2018. It's like finally new enemy classes, new ways for them to like engage in combat, and mixing that finally with a new sandbox with this subclass finally makes the final shape something that's gonna revitalize from a gameplay perspective what playing Destiny has been for the last 10 years. And it's fitting, especially with what this leak is mentioning, that we're finally getting this at the tail end, because it may finally portend us of what their way of thinking on how they're gonna build a potential Destiny 3. Because after 7 years of Destiny 2 that are still on PS4 and Xbox One, it's still like technology, like the tech is like that old now. It's like there is such a hard need for a reset for this franchise, especially because we should have got. I keep saying it over and over again. Like we wouldn't be in the situation had we at least started Destiny 3 like in 2020 when we should have had. Because then that way would have like reset the chessboard bad, because Bungie was independent. They needed all the money, so they didn't want to do it. So they wanted to double down on a game that was not meant to run that long. That's why we got the content bolting that took out the first 2 years of the game, or at least the first year and a half, because there's still parts of year 2 that are still in the game, like the Dreaming City, the raid, and all that. But it's like bolted all the campaigns and basically created this weird situation for the game where there is no base experience for you to start playing it, and that's so hard to recommend the game to any newcomer because of that. I have been like screaming to the heavens, do anything like anything possible to bring back the Red War. As even as mediocre as the Red War may seem, like nowadays, at least it was a base, something to start. Because there's no way to do that, and because of the long and the tooth nature of the game. Now, like, I'm really happy, especially like I believe that there will be a Destiny 3 because it's like Luke Smith, the director of the original director of Destiny 2 before he passed the reins over to Joe Blackburn, who left recently. He has not been like shown, like he hasn't like appeared publicly since like the reveal of the Witch Queen and Lightfall back in 2020, which also considered with Beyond Light, and also briefly during like the 30th anniversary kind of like stream they did for the reveal of the Witch Queen in 2021. So he's kind of been like MIA all this time. So it looks me showing up for that video is like, and then mentioning that there's more about for Destiny 2 and beyond. I do believe now that they finally know that it's time for a reset. It's like they really like wrung this rock out of all its blood, and I would say it's like really good run. I mean, that you can extract almost 7 years out of just this sequel, which on top of that it was building on top of the first 3 years that was the original game that have been just left in oblivion now. Like, I mean, people can go back and play the original game. Like, thankfully at the very least, like everything they put out of in the original game is still there compared to Destiny 2. That there's like the first 2 years are just straight up missing. So I hope this is the new start. It's like there's still something about Destiny, like when people play it, is like they get it. It's like I know it's like Stockholm syndrome that Destiny is probably the best game you love, you hate to play, or your most hated game that you can stop loving. Is like it's like a battered relationship we have with this game, but it's like at its core is just so good. And when I saw the response that the Final Shape gameplay reveal did, which even brought freaking Fireteam chat, the IGN Destiny show that got shelved after its 300 episode, because that's how impressed they were of what they were showing, because they finally felt like they cooked something impressive with what they showed. That I'm like, there's still interest. It's like I've been seeing the player counts finally like revive over at the Steam chart for this game. Is like when there's like new content and the content looks good, Destiny's still really good. And I'm really excited to dive back into Destiny 2, especially getting more of the new weapons that, not new, the reprised weapons they got into the light. I definitely want to do the Horde mode all the way to level 50. I definitely want to do the raid boss gauntlet that they're introducing on the 30th, because that's going to be like such a fun time for our clan that we love raiding, but we usually unanimously our favorite part of the race is doing the boss battles, and now the boss gauntlets is finally allowing us to just do boss battles, and they're gonna like tweak some of these strategies. So I can't wait to see what we come up with, but it's just gonna like distill the raid experience, and I can't wait for that. It's like it feels good to finally have some excitement back for Destiny, because I have completely lost my excitement, especially like I was tepid with the Final Shape reveal, because I was like, okay, they're kind of like trying to like lower expectations, maybe because they want to like overblow expectations, because it's better to be tempered instead of having high expectations than be disappointed. Look what happened with Lightfall. The layoffs and losing some key talent like Michael Salvatore like late last year was like so deflating and so demoralizing that then it's like I was reaching a Final Shape. I was like, it's insane that a game I've been playing for almost 10 years, I'm going to get there in the most underwhelming fashion possible. And it's like, even though I mentioned that I hate Marvel nowadays, but it's like I'll still love that 2008 to 2019 period, the Infinity Saga that ended with Endgame. It's like I'll never forget reaching Endgame back in April 2019. It's like how momentous that felt, how great that felt, and seeing that there was like the positive momentum heading into that finale, and how great they stuck that landing. That I was like, it sucks that Destiny is like they wanted to position this that way, and it was just not getting there because they fumbled the bag so catastrophically bad with Lightfall. So finally, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I hope they, especially with what they teased, I hope they know that the Final Shape has to hit. It's like a great ending can like really elevate your entire experience, people. It's like that's like true almost everywhere, and a bad ending will just sour could just potentially also sour an entire experience. That's always the danger, and I hope that they know that, because there's a lot of writing with this. Bungie right now is in a precarious position with their 45% earnings that they missed with Lightfall, which is catastrophic in when it comes to projections. So rooting for them is like, there's a reason I stuck with this game and this franchise for 9 years, which is wild. It's gonna be 10 now. So now story number 3. Story by Tom Ivan over at BGC. Star Wars Outlaws gets new story trailer and release date as pre-orders go live. Following a recent leak, the trailer confirms that the game will be released on August 30, 2024 for PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. However, players who purchase the game's newly revealed Gold or Ultimate Editions will receive 3 days of early access in addition to digital goods, including the game's Season Pass. Pre-orders for the game launched today, which was yesterday. Customers who pre-order Star Wars Outlaws will receive the Kessel Runner bonus pack, which includes cosmetics for protagonist Kay's Peter and for her ship, the Trailblazers. So, this is what comes with the special edition. So, the Gold Edition includes the base game, the Season Pass including 2 narrative expansions, an exclusive Jabba's Gambit mission available at launch, and a character cosmetic pack, and up to 3 days of early access. And then there's the Star Wars Outlaws Ultimate Edition, which includes the base game, the Season Pass, or what I mentioned before, a Sabak Shark bundle, a Rogue Infiltrator bundle, a digital art book, and also up to 3 days of early access. And with development led by Ubisoft Massive, Star Wars Outlaws tells an original story set between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Risk it all as Kay Vess, a scoundrel seeking freedom and the means to start a new life, along with her companion Nix, reads an official description. Fight, steal, and outwit your way through the galaxy's crime syndicates as you join the galaxy's most wanted. In search of true freedom, the resourceful Kay and Nix will journey through the underworld and across the Outer Rim, taking on jobs from syndicates, facing off against intimidating foes, avoiding oppressive Imperial rule, and recruiting a skilled outlaw crew in order to pull off one of the greatest heists the galaxy has ever seen, said creative director Julian Garrity. Lucasfilm Games Vice President Douglas Riley also commented, Star Wars Outlaws invites fans to experience a side of the galaxy that has a treasure trove yet to be explored, the exploits of the scoundrels taking advantage of the golden age of the underworld. We've been inspired by Massive Entertainment's dedication to bringing this aspect of Star Wars to life, including both iconic and new things for fans to explore in an open world. So, Star Wars Outlaws was the most exciting thing that I saw at the summer showcase season from last summer. When the trailer was revealed at the Xbox showcase, I was like, okay, fine, more Star Wars. But the gameplay that they showed over at the Ubisoft Forward was the thing that sold me. And it's so funny because a lot of this trailer that revealed these the release date, which is much sooner than I was expecting. Thankfully, it's close to my birthday, or close after my birthday. My birthday is August 16th, so this is out 14 days later, but 11 days if I pay for the expensive edition. It's like the story trailer that they showed here didn't really move the needle for me. I was like, it didn't really make me more or less excited for the game. It was just more like, cool, glad I know now when the game is coming out. But I still trying to hold up to the energy that I felt when I saw the reveal back last summer, like that gameplay. Finally, the Star Wars open world game we've never really had, and Jedi Survivor got close, but it's still not quite that. So this is probably gonna be that. I know a lot of people are like, they're the usual suspects, like complaining about the way the main character Kay looks and all that, because things have been really bad this year when it comes to like really bad faith actors. Just doing the most stupid discourse over at Twitter's platform, which of course it would happen in an election year. But besides that, it's like I'm finally excited to know that it's coming soon. It's like it's wild that Avatar came out in December and 8 months later this is ready. It's like, I guess Massive Entertainment's name is pretty literal. They are a massive team, because on top of that they announced the Division 3. So we'll see how the Division 3 goes, but it's still excited. But it's like, I wish the story trailer had made me more excited. And I think this is also something that I was kind of chatting with Paul and also my buddy Sebastian, because I've been like in my chats, I've been very, very vocal about my hatred for Marvel, and I don't know how much my hatred for Marvel also stems from a disdain that I'm currently having over Disney, and me wanting Disney to not have like the downfall of Disney is kind of something that I'm like graining year to year, because it's like they were so dominant for so long and they exerted malign influence over so many industries. Even right now, especially with the Dead Space story really brought to life, being like, yeah, they're gonna kill their own IP, put it on ice, but yeah, let's do a Marvel game. It's So it's like Marvel just feels like something that's just like becoming a creative vacuum in the industry, and because Star Wars is also part of Disney, that's kind of like inherently also inherently damaged by association in a way. And also it doesn't help that last year both The Mandalorian season 3 and Ahsoka were disappointing. I've been like, it's really the more I got removed from it, like because I remember, and at the moment I was still enjoying Mandalorian season 3, but then looking back I was like, oh man, it's like it was just really coping. I was like, this really wasn't that great. And Ahsoka was even more heartbreaking because I was like, oh gosh, it's like it's doubling down on the things I don't like about what they're doing with modern Star Wars TV shows and making everything kind of like a homework, and like leaving so much important stuff to supplementary material and hurting like the main course. And that was like so exemplary. Like, that was so exemplified with Ahsoka, with how incomplete it felt. Obviously, they announced that there's a season 2, so hopefully Filoni does better that way. But it's just more like Filoni was the guy that couldn't do no wrong, and now I feel like I've been seeing him stumble a little bit more. So it's like it's less. I get less excited with that. And then obviously Jedi Survivor, I did really love. Jedi Survivor was one of my favorite games from last year. And I definitely am trying to time a replay of Jedi Survivor for May the 4th around that time, because hopefully, I don't know how long Stellar Blade will be, because that would potentially be my next review. So it could overlap depending. But I bought that game on a sale on Xbox because I have a Series X. I kind of wanted to see how that game ran almost in its entirety in that console, because I got the Platinum Trophy on PS5. So I kind of want another reason to kind of do another 100% run again. But even then, while I really love that, it's like, yeah, it's like I'm slowly like entering on again my cynical era of Star Wars again, and watching this trailer and feeling it not moving the needle, it also made me worry. It's like, oh crap, it's like, is the cynicism like getting to me again after I kind of like got out of that cynicism like hard early last year? We'll see. But if this is still my second most anticipated game of the year, based on the list we did with Paul in January, so I'm still trying to keep that energy of that gameplay reveal, because it's like that gameplay really impressed me, and I really hope that it's not a typical Ubisoft downgrade, as it usually is with them, that their first look is always the most impressive and then subsequent looks are less impressive. So, yep, let's see how it goes. Final big story before we head over to quick headlines. Story by Andy Robinson over at BGC. Xbox is reportedly planning Gears and Call of Duty reveals at its summer event. That's according to The Verge, which claims that the event is currently planned for Sunday, June 9th, the same weekend as Summer Game Fest and the day before Ubisoft's Forward event. As the Xbox strategy continues to evolve inside Microsoft and Chowdhury's departure triggers more shakeups, Microsoft is in the middle of planning for its big summer Xbox showcase, wrote journalist Tom Warren. I understand this is set to take place on Sunday, June 9th, and Microsoft is currently planning to announce a new Gears of War game at the show. A Gears announcement won't be the only new Xbox game at the show, which will also include release dates for upcoming Xbox games like Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, Avowed, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and of course a new Call of Duty that's set to debut later this year. The Verge report is the second time this week word of a potential Gears of War reveal has entered the news cycle. During the latest episode of the Kinda Funny Xcast, host Paris Lilly made a prediction that Gears 6 news would arrive in the summer, a prediction which was then seemingly verified by that episode's guest, Giant Bomb's Jeff Grubb. I will say I've heard some stuff might be happening with Gears 6 this summer, so I think the tease sounds about right to me, Paris. That seems like what we can expect. Since its acquisition of the Gears of War IP in 2014, Microsoft has released two mainline series entries, 2016's Gears of War 4 and 2019's Gears 5, both developed by the Coalition, as well as Gears of War Ultimate Edition, which launched in 2015, and the turn-based tactics spin-off Gears Tactics, which was 2020 if I'm not mistaken. I love Gears of War. Gears of War is just such a dumb, fun comfort food. I went through the original game again with Paul. We did like online co-op recently. The 360 version, not the Ultimate Edition, because I didn't want to do the Brumac extra chapter. And just the 360 version running on 60 FPS boost, it was still such a fun time. And then we got a third of the way into Gears of War 2 also, and Gears is just so good. It's just such it's meaty, meat bone, like crunchy third-person shooting and cover-based shooting is just so fun. And No other third-person cover-based shooter has done it as good as they have. And I would say that Gears of War 4 and 5, to me, is like they suffered a little bit it's like they're more of the same, just not being done by the original team, even though the game director, which was Rob Ferguson, that worked in the first three, went over to make the Coalition to work on this game. So it's still, there was still some DNA there. But Gears 4 and Gears 5 were definitely more Gears, and Gears 5 was the one that they tried to shake it off with you playing as Kate and having its middle two acts have more of like an open world structure that was interesting, but kind of hurt the pacing and made the game less replayable because of that. But it's like, I still feel that Gears is still very consistent, especially compared to Halo that has been a little bit more up and down, especially what's happened with there. And I do find it funny. It's like Rob Ferguson is known as the guy that you hired that guy to ship product because he's always gonna like hunker down and make sure that something ships. He did that for Bioshock Infinite back in 2013, and he delivered 2 Gears of War games like in a 3-year period in that time. And then when he went over to Blizzard, he was able to get Diablo 4 out the door and not make it a 12-year like development cycle from like announcement or something. So it's like because Diablo 4 was revealed in like 2019, and then 4 years later that thing came out, and then obviously he joined the team in like 2020. So it's like at least he was able to get that game out and a remaster, like a real or remaster / remake of Diablo 2, kind of like in that 3-year window. So it's like, yeah, I do find it really funny. He left the Coalition, and then we haven't heard squat from Gears in like forever. So I hope the wait's worth it. If we've been waiting this long for Gears, I hope it's just not more Gears, because it's like, if it's just more Gears, why didn't it come out sooner? It's just gonna put a lamp on the fact that Rob Ferguson really was like kind of like the key ingredient of getting those games out. And I kind of need that, because I really want Xbox to hit it, people. I really tell you, like them like this news mentioning that we're gonna get the release dates of like about Indiana Jones. It's like, I really love what I saw of Indiana Jones, and I think about could be cool. Xbox just needs their wins. They absolutely need their wins. Like, people came into this year being like, oh look, like Sony really has nothing, and Nintendo just delayed the Nintendo Switch successor to next year. It's like, this should be Xbox's big year. Look what's happened. Is like all the bad news just kind of like sunk any momentum they had with that. Oh yeah, there are older exclusives going multi-platform and all that. That it's so funny to think that they do have like a lineup ready to go. Like Hellblade, the preview has happened last week. They're seeming really positive. That's coming out in May. That they have that, and yet it doesn't seem like they have like the great year ahead of them. Like they have like, and it was so funny. Like with PlayStation, they have literally nothing from first party like in this like first few months, other than the remaster of The Last of Us Part 2, which I liked. But it was like, you still are just a remaster. It's like, or in PlayStation line, like if you're on PlayStation and you understand that an exclusive is an exclusive regardless of if it comes from first, second, or third party, you've been eating good this first few months. Like from Helldivers 2 to Rebirth to Rise of the Ronin, and then Stellar Blade pretty soon. Is like definitely like at least PlayStation has fed their people games on top of like all the third party stuff that has been happening in this first few months. And Xbox really, now it feels like from Hellblade onwards, that should be good for them. I would hope that they have that momentum, because we still don't know what the hell even Sony's doing for the rest of this year. So it's like, it does feel like they like emptied the barrel for this first 4 months, which has been good. But then it's like, there's 8 months to go for the rest of the year. So we'll see. It's like, I own all systems. I freaking bought a Series X because I believed in them. And it just feels like they just keep fumbling the bag, and I'm still hoping for the best for them. Like that tease of them potentially doing like a handheld for later this year, as part of like the tease that Sarah Bond made at that podcast of them doubling down on hardware. I feel like an Xbox handheld with Series S specs would be great, because it's like they already have to build a Series S version of every game. What if like the handheld version is kind of spec similarly? It's like, then that way they can have like that console gaming on the go. That could be really appealing for them, because it's like the world's most powerful console pitch that they have tried to time and again since the Xbox One X has really moved the needle for them, which is so wild. So it's like Power's not everything. So maybe something like more unique could be like something that really keeps them stronger in the game, because I want them to be in the game. I don't want them to go the way of Sega, because that's how it feels like sometimes. It's like the console sales are like plateauing or going down in Europe, while the PlayStations are keep like rising, and the Nintendo Switch is still having some strong momentum despite the fact that they're like in the twilight years. It's like they need to be better. It's like we need three competitors. We need three strong competitors in the console space. So hoping the best for Gears. And then Call of Duty that's supposed to be the Gulf War game. That the last thing we heard rumors was that they're doubling down on doing more open world missions. And I would hope that goes better than Modern Warfare 3, which they were kind of shitted out. But if that was kind of like baked into the campaign design from the very beginning, and this being Raven / Treyarch, if I'm not mistaken, if it's the Cold War team, hopefully it's good, because I really like Cold War. So, and thankfully I have a Series X now. Like, this better be a Game Pass day one, because I don't want to spend $70 again in a fucking Call of Duty game. So, now into some quick headlines. Not as many as last week's, but there's just a few. So, Vampire Survivors, the hit indie game from 2022, is getting a Contra DLC next month, and it was also announced that they're finally releasing a PS4 and PS5 version later this summer. I know, kind of funny, Greg Miller had been like bullying them, like constantly been asking where the PS5 version of that game was, or just a PlayStation version in general, because it launched first on Xbox, then it launched on Switch, and PlayStation was just kind of like MIA, but eventually it got there. So yeah, finally, Vampire Survivors is a really fun game. I really enjoy playing that on my phone, because it's like its automatic nature is so addicting. That's out finally on PlayStation on this summer. When in the summer? I don't know. Now, next headline: the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth soundtrack featuring 175 tracks is out now. Yeah, I would know. Like, I'm currently listening to it as I've been like recording this episode. That's been kind of like my background music. I found like a SoundCloud where someone called Infinite. What was it? The account name? Someone named Infinite Shadow has uploaded the entire tracks of that soundtrack to SoundCloud, and they did the same thing for the Final Fantasy 16 202 soundtrack. 202 tracks of that soundtrack, and I have them like downloaded in my SoundCloud because I love listening to those soundtracks. So I'm considering probably buying the physical version of this thing, because I love Rebirth so much and I want to keep supporting them. But at the very least, as I wait, if those things ever come to my place, I have a way to listen to that entire soundtrack, and that is probably one of the greatest soundtrack I've ever heard in my life. It's so beautiful. So, next headline: a Prince of Persia roguelite from Dead Cells studio Evil Empire has been announced. So that's really cool that we get both a new Prince of Persia game, like in a Metroidvania style, earlier this year, which I really liked. I still prefer the Sands of Time trilogy and the 2008 reboot more, but I still love that Prince of Persia game. And now we get like a roguelite version from the Dead Cells team, and I love Dead Cells. I loved Dead Cells: The Return to Castlevania last year, so that team can do no wrong in the roguelite for me. Another headline, one that like pleases me, because again, hashtag fuck Marvel. Helldivers 2 sales outpacing Spider-Man 2 in the UK. I'll say this, like, Helldivers 2, I really like. I went back to briefly. I didn't put it in games I played because I think it was last Wednesday or last Thursday that I went back with my clan. Paul was there, and two guys from my clan. We actually did like a couple missions together, and it was a really fun time. But it's like Helldivers 2 is just not the kind of game that I like playing for more than 30 minutes. I just prefer doing other stuff, but I really appreciate and respect what it's done. And I love Helldivers 2 as my live service kind of like championing of like, yes, keep showing your success, because you're showing a really clever way to do a live service that's not the traditional MMO light. We're going to drag you through a season like they keep doing it. I really love how their quartermaster style of live service has really worked. And anything that will give more success than stupid Spider-Man 2, which I still hate. Like, I finally decided that there's nothing in that game that's gonna work for me. It's like Spider-Man 2 is just not is a really big miss. It's the biggest miss of that generation for me. Like, New Game Plus bored me to tears. I was like, damn, this didn't even do it for me. So it's like anything that can beat that overproduced piece of garbage, I'm all for. So And then next two headlines are kind of like Fallout related, sort of. Todd Howard keeps saying no to an Elder Scrolls TV show amidst this Fallout Season 2 renewal. So, obviously, the Fallout TV show launched late last night, or was it early yesterday? I don't know. Like, it launched this week, amongst a lot of big critical acclaim, which I wouldn't expect anything less from Jonathan Nolan. And already got its Season 2 renewal. And apparently, during that renewal, people asked Todd Howard, hey, would you ever do an Elder Scrolls TV show? And he's like, not right now. And I would imagine doing an Elder Scrolls TV show would be a little harder because it's fantasy stuff. We saw how long, like, obviously, Fallout was done by Amazon. We know how much they spent for Lord of the Rings. So I can imagine, like, trying to do an Elder Scrolls and that feels like it's in that world was also cost a pretty penny. And we know that even the $1 billion that Rings of Power cost didn't really help that show. So I still have to finish it. It's like Rings of Power really lost me. So. And then the final Fallout-related news headline. Fallout 4's delayed current-gen upgrade is coming this month on April 25th for PS5 and Xbox Series X for free. So they had announced this was coming last year, and people were wondering if this was going to come out before Starfield, and then Starfield kind of took priority. And then I was like, okay, Starfield is out. It delighted some, it disappointed some. When is the next-gen upgrade for Fallout 4? And now we know. April 25th. I knew that they were gonna, like, if it was not out, they were gonna try to synergize, and they got their synergy because it's like I know Fallout 76 is still getting content, and a lot of people are still saying like, hey, you should give Fallout 76 another shot. It's like, it's not as disastrous as it used to be. And Fallout 4 now next gen upgrade, now both consoles will have their 60 FPS mode. Xbox Series X already had the 60 FPS mode, but it was under the 60 FPS mode of that game was the FPS boost that required the lowering of resolution for it to work. So it looked like the Xbox One version, but running at a faster frame rate. Instead of like the more visually impressive, but still kind of like, Fallout janky 4K mode that you could do like on baseline. So now it's like this is supposed to get those two things out on top of like a bunch of other upgrades that they announced. I have a feeling that Fallout 4 has been an interesting one. I was like, this was a highly hyped game back in 2015. Then people played it and they were like, oh yeah, this is not the second coming of Jesus Christ, especially coming in the year that The Witcher 3 had come out and elevated open world RPGs. And a lot of people have been like more poo-pooing Fallout 4, but then I know there was like some... Wait, was Fallout 4 actually better than Starfield maybe? Like, especially after Starfield kind of came in and just wasn't like the game of the generation that a lot of people were hoping and praying it was going to be. That now with the new next gen bells and whistles, I have a feeling a lot of people are going to go back to Fallout 4 and there's going to be massive revision of that game. That's going to be way different from how people felt about it in 2015. And it's the fact that there hasn't been a real Fallout in 9 years. 76 doesn't count. So, and with that, we're heading over to the releases for April 14th to April 20th. So, Dave the Diver, the hit indie game that came out on PC and Switch last year, comes to PS5 and PS4 on April 16th. And they announced that game is coming to PS Plus Extra, the $15 and above version of PS Plus. That's the Game Pass competitor. Kind of similar to how they did other indie games, kind of like the Chia and Stray. So, they did ever. I don't know if it's gonna launch as a paid product first, and then you have to, because they update PS Plus stuff on the 21st. So I don't know if it's like, if you want to play now, you have to buy it, or if they're gonna do like an exception and offer it early. But yeah, Dave the Diver's coming to that service for PS5 and PS4. No news yet on the Xbox version. That supposedly will come out later, I would hope. Grounded also comes out the same day on PS5, PS4, and Switch. This is the Xbox survival 4-player Ant RPG that was a big hit in both early access and in full release in both 2019 and 2022 over on Xbox. This is one of the 4 Xbox exclusives that were no longer exclusives, that are becoming multi-platform. And yeah, it's releasing on the 16th. 14 days later, it's going to be Sea of Thieves on PS5. So that makes 3 out of the 4 Bethesda games or Xbox games that Microsoft was like, yeah, we're sending them over to multi-platform stuff. Then we got Harold Halibut coming on to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC Also on April 16. April 16 is like a massive release day, it seems like. But that's a Tuesday. It's an adventure game from Slow Bros. I don't know what that is. But I guess... Oh, it's also gonna come to Game Pass. Wait, at least you can try it for the price of free. Planet of Lana. This is like... I know Sebastian was a big fan of this one last year. Now it comes to PS5, PS4, and Switch on April 16. It's so funny. April 16 is the... Oh yeah, these games that were... a bunch of these games that were coming to... That came first to Xbox are now on PlayStation. So they're all kind of packed together in the same day. And then another game that comes out on April 16 is Rose and Camellia Collection coming to Switch. What even is this? Let me see. It's a fighting game from Way Forward Technologies. So yeah, that's for that's for those people. Then Reigns Beyond. It's coming to Switch and PC. This is from Devolver Digital, maybe one of their indie weirdness, whatever that is. My most anticipated one for this week, Final Fantasy 16 The Rising Tide, the second and final DLC for Final Fantasy 16 comes to PlayStation 5 on April 18th. So this will go live around the time next week's episode goes live. Now, so we may not have impressions from that DLC, because if it launches like on midnight, we would have done a recording of the episode by that point. And then No Rest for the Wicked PC. I think this is the PC early access for the new game by Moon Studios, the guys that made Ori and the Blind Forest. I love Ori, especially the Blind Forest. Will and the Wisp I like, but I don't like as much as Blind Forest. I found it more gamey and less special. But a lot of people really prefer Will of the Wisp for being a better game. I appreciate that. It's like, to me, it was like Ori and the Blind Forest was an experience. It was just kind of like a magical experience that was so unique and so distilled and so ethereal that then it got Hollow Knighted. It was like they definitely saw Hollow Knight and they're like, let's copy that. And that's how they made Will of the Wisp, where it even has like more characters that speak to you, their side quests and all that. It's like, this is not what I want out of Ori, but it's still a pretty great game. Like, at least some of the highs of Will of the Wisp are equally as high as Blind Forest. But now No Rest for the Wicked is like their new game that was this was announced at the Game Awards. There's like a top-down Diablo style like action RPG that's like isometric that also has Souls-like elements. The early access launches that day. I may break my I don't like playing on PC rule and may try to cop the early access for this thing, because I really like that studio and I kind of want to support them. And I do have the computer my brother let me have that. It's like a 3060 GTX. Maybe it will be able to run it well and I'll get to play there. So those are the releases for April 14th to April 20th, and that brings us to the conclusion of this week's episode of the X Button. You can find me at _Drosegovia on Twitter /X. You can also find me at Alejandro Segovia 93 on Threads /Instagram. And you can find my written content at both thecriticalcorner.com, where you can read my older stuff, and then my current written stuff over at seasongaming.com, where you can read my reviews for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, Skull and Bones, and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth as my current contributions to Season Gaming this year. And we'll see what else. Maybe the Rising Tide DLC will be my next review, because I thought it was going to be Dragon's Dogma 2 and I bounced. So, and then you can go follow Paul at Dork of Art over on Twitter to see some of his random, sometimes art that he posts, or the fun retweets that he sometimes finds. Next week he'll be back, and then we'll see you then for another episode of the X-Bot. I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you like what you listened or watched, give us a like and subscribe, and maybe leave a review on your podcast service of your choice. So, no longer Google, which sucks. So, like, Google killed another system, but at least we have Spotify and Apple Podcasts still posting. But then, until then, enjoy the rest of April. We're close to halfway through, which is wild. This year just keeps flying by. We'll be, the summer will hit us before we know it, and then we're gonna be scorched. It's gonna be a scorched hell outside. But I know a lot of people love the scorched hell of summer. Not me. I like my AC. But until then, play some games, enjoy your immense backlog, and press X to play. Hasta la vista, baby.